All right, everyone. Hello, I am Thomas, and welcome to my channel. I do educational videos, and today is no exception. We'll be doing video number 66 on the reciprocal system of theory, derived by Dewey B. Larson back in the middle part of the 20th century up until his death in 1990. And today we're looking, I think this is the 44th video that we've done on his final book that is called Beyond Space and Time. And this book came out after he died in 1995, and it is a departure in that it is dealing with metaphysical issues. All of his previous books were physical science, astronomy and physics and chemistry and so on. And these books are on philosophy, religion, or this book is on philosophy, religion, and psychology, and a few other things, a little biology thrown in there. And we are right now in chapter 16, which is called Dream Interpretation. So he's getting into discussing his dreams. Now, and everybody's dreams. Just to give a quick wrap up here, the basic gist of Larson's theory is that the universe is not made out of matter, and the universe is not made out of energy, but the universe is made out of motion. And motion, so both energy and matter are kinds of motion. And as is really everything else in the universe, all kind of scientific units, they all are forms of motion. Motion is the relationship between time and space, or the ratio or the fraction. Every kind of motion is some kind of relationship between time and space. Time over space, space over time. Space over time to the second power. Time over space to the second power. Because the next part of Larson's thing is that both space and time have 3 dimensions. And I would add 3 or 4 dimensions, but that's pretty much for later discussion. And they are both quantized, meaning that they both have a minimum unit. There's a minimum unit of space, that's 1 unit, but nothing less than that can exist. And then there's a minimum unit of time, that is 1 unit, and that nothing less than that can exist. And 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time is the speed of light. The speed of light is, unlike what Einstein says, where he says the speed of light is the maximum speed of the universe, Larson is saying that the speed of light is the neutral point, or the midpoint of the universe. And also so there is a half of the universe that's moving faster than the speed of light. And then there's also the half that is moving slower than the speed of light that we are accustomed to, that is called the physical universe. And it's called the material sector. This is also the physical universe as well, but this is the material sector, or sector 1. This, faster than the speed of light, is physical, but it is what he calls the cosmic sector, or sector 2. And then the boundary between them, that speed of light, that is non-physical. It's metaphysical, beyond space and time. He calls that sector 3. Other people would use more lofty terms like God or the spirit world. And so we don't know anything about this sector 2, except that we know stuff about sector 1. And by the reciprocal relationship between space and time, we can extrapolate here what is here with the slower than the speed of light sector, which is really the realm of space over time relationships. this is where you have your three-dimensional time, three-dimensional space, and you have your progressing time or flow of time. Over here, all you have to do to extrapolate is just reverse the space and time relationships. So over here, you have time over space relationships, and you have three-dimensional time, XYZ coordinates, or four-dimensional with WXYZ, and you have a space that is progressing or flowing. And this can be seen in the recession of the distant galaxies identified by the Hubble telescope back in the 20s. All the galaxies are moving away from each other in a scalar manner. And this kind of scalar motion is a motion with no direction. Or you can think of it as motion with every direction. And you can envision it by just taking a balloon, putting a bunch of dots on the balloon with a magic marker, and then blowing up the balloon. All of the dots are moving away from each other. So that is an outward scalar motion. If you suck in the balloon, then all of the dots will be moving toward each other. That is an inward scalar motion. They don't have any specific direction. It just has a magnitude. And that is the fundamental motion that Larson is discussing, where he says the universe is made out of motion. It's made out of a scalar motion, not a vectorial motion. A vectorial motion is a motion that has a direction. That is where you get like the XYZ coordinates. That's vectorial motion. So we've got sector 1 and sector 2. Sector 1 builds up by aggregation, things moving together with one another and connecting with one another. Once the aggregation gets to its most complex level, which Larson says is DNA, then that DNA molecule becomes eligible to be taken under the control of a sector 2 unit. And this sector 2 unit can then connect with the sector 1 unit, and even though it's only a minor part of it, it can take control, and Larson calls that the life unit. Life is a combination of material and cosmic units. And then further, life can develop up until its most complex level, which Larson says is the intelligent human or humanoid. And at that point, it is eligible to be taken control by a sector 3 unit, which is a unit that is beyond time and space. And at that point, there ensues somewhat of a competition between sector 2 and sector 3 controls, because the sector 2 control is predicated on or toward survival, whereas the sector 3 unit is geared toward ethical behavior or good behavior. And so you've got those two different objectives in the mind of the human being. Now, when we're talking about Larson here, chapter 16, dream interpretation, dreams are basically a sector 2 thing because they are part of the mental apparatus. It's a result of thinking and memory, which are prerequisites for sector 3. So there's a sector 3 interest involved, but it's really sector 2. It's in order to get to that place where a sector 3 can take control. And dreaming is as the result of, we have a thinking apparatus which includes memory, thinking and memory, and those are, part of the sector 2 apparatus. And sector 2 is based on this three-dimensional time, this vectorial time, whereas sector 1 is based on the flow of time. And so as a result, the both the thinking and the memory will get out of sync with the flow of time. And if they get far enough out of sync, the individual has to unplug the thinking and the memory and rewind them to get them back into sync. And that process is called sleep. And but the memory process is more simple than the thinking process. And so the memory process has to be shut off for less time than the thinking process is shut off. And so once the memory process is done rewinding, it pretty much just idles. And at this part where it's idling, memory is idling, but thinking is still rewinding, is what you call REM sleep. So this is where the dreaming comes from. Now, in the last episode, we were talking about Freud, and Larson's his basic idea is that dreams do not contain any symbolism. They appear to contain symbolism because the memory process is a process of association, and many things can be substituted by the memory in the process of association. A thing and its opposite are associated with each other. You can say somebody, you can see Jackie Robinson on the baseball field, and you can see, the UN peacekeeper or whatever, peacekeepers, and they both have blue helmets on. And so you can associate them together, and they can switch from one to the other just by association. Everything with everything has a blue helmet is fair game to be switched in there, if that's what you're kind of gauging things by. So you can get all kinds of bizarre substitutions as a result of the association process. But basically, Larson is saying that the contents of the dream are basically events of the previous day that are basically played back to you, but these associative substitutions are there, and so sometimes you don't recognize what's going on, but they are specifically literal in their and there's no need for any type of interpretation. All you have to do is just go back to the previous day, pretty much, and examine your activities, and the contents of your dreams are the result of the theme of your dreams are the result of what happened to you the day before. So we're going to pick up here. He just got done kind of going over a few of Freud's dreams that he insisted were needed to be interpreted due to symbolism, and he showed exactly how they were actual events, experiences in Freud's life that he had the day before. Okay, so here we go. Now he's talking about his dreams. I do not dream of things that are inherently absurd or incredible, although they may be combined in absurd ways because of the inability of the memory system to recognize incongruity. It is probable that this is the general rule, but my rejections are based on what I consider absurd, not on the judgment of anyone who attempts to interpret my dreams. This too must be the general rule. If anyone believes in ghosts, he may very well dream of ghosts, even if I do not. Anyone who thinks, reads, or hears about relativity physics may dream of a station moving to meet a train, regardless of how absurd that may seem to Freud. That was one of the examples that Freud gave, or to any other dream interpreter. The rather fortuitous fact that Freud gives us enough information to show that the illustrative examples he uses in 3 different applications are almost certainly direct memories rather than instances of the symbolism, wish fulfillment, distortion, and concealment that he employs in trying to interpret them, leads lends strong support to the conclusions that I have reached from theory and from the analysis of my own dreams. Normal dreams, I find, are simply memories altered in their details in most cases because of the nature of the memory process that is involved. Okay, the significance of dreams, as seen in the light of the findings of this present investigation, can be best expressed by comparing the dream state to the idling of a motor of an automobile while the vehicle is stationary. In dreams, the memory apparatus is idling. In a similar manner, maintaining continuity of operation without accomplishing any other useful purpose. This is a far cry from the prophetic role seen by the ancient world and the safety valve concept proposed by Freud, but it is all that the evidence will support. This does not mean that there is nothing to be learned from dreams. Most diagnostic work on automobile motors is done under idling conditions. And the reasons for this procedure are applicable, at least in some degree, to the memory mechanism as well. It is therefore reasonable to conclude that those who are diagnosing the ailments of the human mind may find the idling period convenient for some of their investigations. It might be concluded from what has been said in this and the 3 preceding chapters that the results of the present investigation are adverse to the essential claims of the psychoanalysts. This is not true as a general proposition. On the contrary, these new results are entirely in agreement with Freud's assertion that there is a continuing conflict between different aspects of each individual's personality. The question as to whether this conflict is the cause of personality disorders, and the further question as to whether such disorders can be cured by exposing and treating the conflict, are outside the scope of this work, but in light of the present findings, the contentions of the psychiatrist and psychoanalyst in these respects are plausible. The finding that the individual components of the dream reproduce the original memories without the concealment or distortion envisioned by the psychoanalyst does not preclude departures from reality in the dreams of abnormal or troubled individuals, or in a lesser degree, those of some individuals who could be considered normal. But it points to the original memory as the location of the distortion rather than the dream. It is the memory that is subject to control. There is a certain degree of mental control over the non-REM dreams, but most of these dreams have a matter-of-fact character that is not compatible with the distortion hypothesis. The distortions that the dream interpreters claim to find are primarily in the REM dreams, which, according to theory, cannot be distorted by the dreamer because they are not subject to control. Memories, on the other hand, are notoriously inaccurate, and much of this inaccuracy is a product. I'm getting lost. I thought maybe he had a typo there, but I guess that's right. Memories, on the other hand, are notoriously inaccurate, and much of this inaccuracy is a product of the individual's attitude. To a considerable degree, we see what we want to see and remember what we want to remember. Thus, even though the dreams merely reflect what is contained in the memory system, they do reveal some things about the production of these memories that may be just as useful to the analyst as the distortions for which he has hitherto been searching. So he's basically saying Freud and the others are not out of a job if, Larson's, his hypothesis is valid. They just have to kind of retool their grift, and they can go on being psychoanalysis dream interpreters, but just do it in a different way. The dream we have been treating psychoanalysis merely as one of the prominent schools of psychology, the study of human behavior, and the amount of attention that has been given to the theories of Freud is merely a result of the fact that dreams play a much larger part in his theories than in those of schools of other psychology. But Freud and his followers have made some assumptions that have a bearing on the conflict between science and religion in present-day thought. So he's going to give that some consideration. Personality disorders, according to Freud, are due to conflicts between different aspects of an individual's psychic mechanisms. He identifies three of these: the id, the primitive animal-like aspects, the ego, the social aspect developed by contact with the outside world, and the superego, which is commonly equated somewhat roughly with conscience. Disorders of certain types originate, he says, from conflicts between the id and the ego. Others originate from conflicts between the ego and the superego. Okay, now we will get into this here tomorrow, and we'll finish this chapter here tomorrow. But we are pretty much out of time right now. So we're going to start out just talking about Freud's personality conflicts, and then he's going to apply this, his dream interpretation theory to that. All right. Thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you have a great day. Hope you come back tomorrow, and we will see you then.